What if time isn't what we think it is? What if every moment you've lived is still happening somewhere? The past, the future, parallel versions of you, collapsing, folding, blending into one consciousness. We used to believe time moved like a line, but now it feels like a loop, a spiral, a puzzle we're only just beginning to solve, because maybe, just maybe, it's not time that's collapsing. It's the illusion of separation. All is mind, not metaphor, not symbol, but truth whispered before time was time. The universe you see, every galaxy, every tear, every war and wonder, is but a thought in the mind of the all, a dream in divine stillness, a pulse of infinite intelligence thinking itself alive. You are not separate from this. You are the thought that knows it is thinking. A sliver of the eternal dreamer, wrapped in flesh, wandering the illusion of division. Every belief you carry, every word you speak in silence, becomes blueprint. You are both architect and structure, both question and the answer beneath it. Look around. Your reality is not happening to you. It is happening from you. You were told thoughts are fleeting, but they are seeds, and every seed grows inward or outward, light or shadow, consciously or blindly. So what are you planting? Who taught you to doubt the soil of your soul? Who whispered weakness into your sacred script? Erase it. Burn it. Reclaim the pen. The law of mentalism does not negotiate. It simply is. Your inner world births the outer one. Mind is master, and you see are its origin. This is not mysticism. This is memory. Thought is the father of form. Will is the womb of worlds. Have you noticed how the world stopped evolving? I don't mean technology, I mean humanity, our rhythm, our soul. Close your eyes not to escape but to return, to a memory that isn't just yours, but shared by every soul who walked this earth in the last century. We're not here to recall events. We're here to trace the frequency of consciousness through time. Let's begin in the 1960s. This decade was not just about politics or fashion. It was a rupture in the collective illusion. The civil rights movement wasn't simply about race. It was about the soul of humanity confronting the myth of separation. For the first time in a long time, a generation began to say, this system doesn't reflect who we are. And they didn't just say it, they acted on it. They resisted war, not to run from duty, but to reclaim moral agency. This was not rebellion for its own sake. It was a collective memory surfacing, the remembrance that humanity was meant for something higher than domination and division. Then came the 1970s. People often misinterpret this decade as an escape into dance, drugs, and disco. But if you look deeper, you'll see it was a recalibration. After the rupture of the 60s, people didn't find answers, they sought rhythm. They danced not because they were celebrating, but because they were grieving. Watergate shattered public trust. The energy crisis revealed the fragility of industrial progress. And yet the surface culture tried to cover it all with sequins and lights. What we're really seeing here is a society trying to self-soothe through motion, not healing, coping. The silence between songs held more truth than the lyrics. And then the 1980s. This is when the ego was institutionalized, not just in individuals, but in economics, architecture, even spirituality. Corporate skyscrapers became the new temples. The media told us success meant accumulation. Image took precedence over essence. It was the rise of spectacle culture, where appearance became more important than authenticity. People believed the system was working, not because it was, but because it looked like it was. That's when we stopped asking real questions, but underneath the surface glitter, a quiet dissatisfaction began to grow. You could feel it, a spiritual drought masked by material abundance. Then the 1990s. This was a strange in-between space. The external noise continued, but something within started to shift. It was more introspective. The glamour faded. Culture softened. Fashion became subdued, less about projecting and more about retreating. Music turned inward. Grunge wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, a low hum of existential fatigue, a collective whisper that said, "We don't know what's next." But this can't be it. It was the first time vulnerability was allowed to speak in mainstream language. And while the world didn't stop, the momentum toward superficiality began to stall. And just as the digital age began to rise, offering unprecedented connection and access to knowledge, something even more vital began to dissolve: direction. We didn't know where we were going anymore, and for the first time in decades it felt like time stopped. Not physically, but spiritually. Y2K, the glitch that wasn't, or was it? The world braced for collapse. It wasn't war. It wasn't disease. It was a number. At exactly 11:59 p.m. on December 31st, 1999, the modern world held its breath. Not because of bombs or politics, but because no one was sure what the machines would do when the clocks hit midnight. They called it Y2K, the Millennium Bug. A programming oversight buried deep in the early code of our digital infrastructure. Systems across the globe were built to track years using only 2 digits. 99 for 1999. But what happens when it rolls over to 00? Would the system think it's 1900? Would everything reset? Would banks fail? Planes drop? Nuclear codes glitch? That was the fear. But here's what they don't talk about. Y2K wasn't just a tech scare. It was the first global stress test of our digital reality. It revealed how much we had outsourced to systems we didn't fully understand. And for a brief moment, humanity stared into the abyss, not of war or extinction, but of a silent collapse from within. No explosion, no enemy, just a quiet, total failure of the code running it all. But then nothing happened, or so it seemed. The lights stayed on, the planes stayed in the sky. Civilization breathed a collective sigh of relief. But behind the scenes, something did change, because for the first time billions of people focused on the same moment in time. Not a holiday, not a war, but a singular second where the entire planet waited to see if reality would hold. And when that kind of collective consciousness focuses that hard, something ripples. Subtle energy researchers later noticed anomalies in the Schumann resonance, EM fluctuations, unusual spikes in brainwave coherence studies. Something real, something measurable, something off. It was like the Earth blinked, and maybe, just maybe, that moment split the timeline, a convergence event masked as a technical glitch. Ask yourself, what if Y2K didn't fail because we fixed it? What if it didn't fail because it was never meant to? What if it was a simulation checkpoint, a silent calibration to see how humanity reacts under pressure? Without even knowing what the real test was, that's why the watchers were watching. That's why the grid vibrated. And that's why, if you were alive back then, you still remember the strange anxiety that had no name. Y2K wasn't about computers, it was about control. And the moment we all silently asked the same question, what happens if the system fails? The aftermath of Y2K, a shift in consciousness. The Y2K scare, a global event that threatened to plunge the world into chaos, passed without the catastrophic collapse predicted by so many. But beneath the surface, something shifted. It wasn't the end of the world, but rather the beginning of a profound change. For those paying attention, it was clear. The glitch wasn't in the technology itself, but in the very fabric of reality we once took for granted. In the aftermath of Y2K, people began to notice things. The world felt different, though no one could quite place why. The expected breakdown didn't come, but something intangible had shifted. It was as though a veil had been lifted, revealing a deeper layer of reality that had always been just out of reach. It was as if time itself had been recalibrated, and the very structure of existence was now more fragile than ever before. This wasn't simply a technical glitch. It was the beginning of a collective awakening, a subtle recognition that something had been altered. The failure to collapse wasn't an accident. It was a signal, a recalibration of time and consciousness. Something was waking up beneath our feet, and we were too focused on the digital glitch to notice the larger transformation taking place. 2K wasn't the moment when the world nearly ended. It was the moment when we nearly saw the end of one reality and the birth of another. And while we were distracted by the clocks ticking down to 0, the fabric of time itself began to unravel. In the years that followed, the glitches became more pronounced. People began experiencing strange synchronicities, unexplained memories, and an eerie sense that things weren't as they seemed. The Mandela Effect began to spread, an idea that memories of the past were being altered and entire events were being erased or rewritten. At first, these oddities were dismissed as coincidences or misunderstandings, but they began to grow more frequent and harder to ignore. Time felt more fluid, as if the lines between past, present, and future were starting to blur. The question is, did we cross into a new timeline? Did the failure of Y2K serve as a catalyst, opening the door to a shift in the collective consciousness, where the very nature of reality was being rewritten? These subtle changes are the first signs that we may be entering a new phase, a great convergence, a point where all timelines meet, where the fragmented pieces of reality begin to align into a single, unified truth. And the most profound realization? We are no longer passive observers. We are participants in the shaping of this reality, choosing the timeline we wish to step into. The Mandela Effect, have you ever felt it? A flicker of memory. That doesn't quite belong, not a dream, not confusion, but a certainty, deep and haunting, that something once was and now is not. Millions have felt it. They swear the children's books they grew up with spelled it Berenstain Bears, not Berenstain. They remember the peanut butter brand Jiffy, not Jif, and they recall Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father," even though every copy of the film now denies it. This isn't nostalgia. This is dissonance. The kind of dissonance that doesn't whisper, but screams, something changed. And then came the name, the Mandela Effect, coined after thousands claimed they remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, long before his actual death in 2013. These memories weren't vague. They were vivid, felt, real. At first, it was dismissed, a quirk of memory, a cultural glitch, but then the anomalies multiplied. Logos, product names, geography, quotes, timelines, too many to ignore, too consistent to be random, and something unsettling began to rise from the collective subconscious. What if these aren't false memories? What if we're remembering a version of reality that no longer exists? Some say we're living in a simulation, that with every shift in the code, every rerun of the program, the smaller variables distort. The result? A world almost identical to the one we knew, but not quite, like waking up in your house and finding the furniture's moved just an inch. Like walking through a museum where the paintings are familiar, but the brushstrokes are wrong. Others say this is a symptom of conscious evolution, that as we ascend vibrationally, we phase out of one frequency band and into another, and in this shift, certain fragments of the old timeline, the ones that no longer resonate, fade. We don't lose them entirely. We remember them as echoes, phantom memories clinging to our awareness like dream fragments after waking. This is retro-causality, not time moving forward, but reality rearranging itself based on the frequency we emit. As you raise your consciousness, the world recalibrates around you, not metaphorically, literally. Entire aspects of the previous timeline disintegrate, not because they never existed, but because they no longer match the song you're singing. And so we stand here, in a world both familiar and foreign, where maps have changed, words have shifted, and time no longer obeys the rules we were taught in school. This is not an error, it's an invitation. To remember that reality is participatory, to realize we're not passive observers of history, we're co-authors of its structure. And every time we raise our vibration, every time we choose alignment over illusion, we're not just healing, we're reprogramming the world we wake up in. A shift in perception. But how does this happen? And why is it happening now? You see, as we move through our conscious evolution, our perception of reality evolves with us. Our consciousness doesn't just passively observe the world, it creates the world. As we shift to higher frequencies of awareness, the world around us begins to reflect that shift. Some things that once fit perfectly into our reality no longer do. It's as if we're tuning ourselves into a new frequency, and the old world, the world we once knew, starts to disintegrate. The glitches we see? Those are the echoes of a reality we've left behind. Things fall out of sync with us, memories fade, and things we once believed to be true now seem impossible. It's the very nature of the universe, retro-causal. Time, like reality, bends and folds. What we think of as the present is actually shaping the past. Our consciousness, as we expand and grow, alters everything around us. Certain aspects of the old world are falling away, leaving behind phantom memories. Have you noticed it? Little things, like the Jiffy peanut butter that never existed, or the famous line, "Luke, I am your father," which was never actually said. These are more than mistakes. They are markers of a reality that's shifting, unraveling, and dissolving. And this is where things get truly fascinating. Everything around you, including time itself, is responding to your frequency. So what happens when time itself starts to lose its stability? What happens when you start bending it, not with machines or technology, but with your mind, with your consciousness? We are no longer bound by the rigid constructs of a linear timeline. We're standing at the edge of a great mystery, one that involves more than just technological glitches. It's a spiritual evolution, a collective awakening. It's time we remember that we are the ones bending time. After the revelations of Project Looking Glass, the story doesn't end. In fact, it leads us deeper into a hidden world. A world where time, consciousness, and reality itself are manipulated in ways you've never imagined. In 1983, the CIA declassified a report, one that buried its findings under layers of jargon, but revealed a truth that would alter our understanding of human potential. This report, known as the Gateway Process, described something extraordinary: consciousness as a waveform capable of bending time and space. It wasn't just science fiction. This was the result of years of research, funded by the government, revealing that the mind could transcend the physical limits we thought defined reality. This wasn't a concept restricted to theoretical physicists. The CIA took it seriously, investing heavily in the potential to tap into abilities far beyond what we thought possible: remote viewing, astral projection, and even timeline displacement. These weren't just theories. They were classified projects with concrete results. They had found a way to use the mind to access futures, multiple possible timelines that existed beyond the conventional limits of time. But what they uncovered shook them to the core. As they experimented, they began to notice a shift, an anomaly. Something was changing. The future they glimpsed through these projects wasn't infinite anymore. It was narrowing. Like a tunnel closing in on a single point, all projected timelines. After 2012 seemed to converge into one singular, unavoidable future. And this future, it was fixed. It could not be altered. It wasn't just about the machine anymore. It was about something even more profound: the nature of time itself, a convergence of human potential, a shift in the very fabric of reality. This was no longer just a military project. It had become an awakening. Whistleblowers like Bill Wood, a former Navy SEAL with high-level clearance, revealed that the secrecy surrounding these experiments was not just to protect national security, but to prevent the world from discovering something far more dangerous: the illusion of free will. What they had seen suggested that humanity wasn't just operating within a linear timeline, but within a structure that could be manipulated, if only we understood the rules. The veil began to thin, and just like in the Matrix, they began to realize they were no longer dealing with just machines or technology. They were dealing with consciousness itself. The mind could transcend time, pierce through the veil of linear existence, and perhaps even alter it. As they delved deeper, another program, Stargate, emerged. It wasn't about machines or complex algorithms. It was about the human mind's ability to see without eyes, to perceive events far beyond the confines of this world, across oceans, continents, and even through time. For over 2 decades, the US government poured resources into this program, training individuals to see beyond the physical world. They weren't just making educated guesses. They were seeing real-time events, including Soviet submarines and classified facilities that no satellite could detect. One of the most astonishing aspects of Stargate came when remote viewers began to see the same thing: a shift, a break in reality centered around 2012. They saw timelines collapsing, reality behaving in ways that didn't fit conventional understanding. It wasn't an apocalypse. It was something else, a crossing over into a state of experience beyond logic, beyond bodies, beyond control. They weren't just predicting the future. They were seeing a rupture in time itself. An event horizon, It wasn't the end of the world. It was the beginning of a new kind of reality. And now, as we stand on the precipice of this event horizon, the question isn't whether these projects existed. The question is what they saw, and more importantly, what it means for us. Because the implications of these programs, the strange convergence of timelines, the bending of time and consciousness, point to a terrifying truth. Time is not linear. Reality is not fixed. And we are far more powerful than we've been told. This isn't the end, it's the beginning of something else. After the revelations of Project Looking Glass, the story doesn't end. In fact, it leads us deeper into a hidden world, a world where time, consciousness, and reality itself are manipulated in ways you've never imagined. In 1983, the CIA declassified a report, one that buried its findings under layers of jargon, but revealed a truth that would alter our understanding of human potential. This report, known as the Gateway Process, described something extraordinary: consciousness as a waveform, capable of bending time and space. It wasn't just science fiction. This was the result of years of research, funded by the government, revealing that the mind could transcend the physical limits we thought defined reality. This wasn't a concept restricted to theoretical physicists. The CIA took it seriously, investing heavily in the potential to tap into abilities far beyond what we thought possible: remote viewing, astral projection, and even timeline displacement. These weren't just theories, they were classified projects with concrete results. They had found a way to use the mind to access futures, multiple possible timelines that existed beyond the conventional limits of time, but what they uncovered shook them to the core. As they experimented, they began to notice a shift, an anomaly. Something was changing. The future they glimpsed through these projects wasn't infinite anymore. It was narrowing, like a tunnel closing in on a single point, all projected timelines. After 2012 seemed to converge into one singular, unavoidable future. And this future? It was fixed. It could not be altered. It wasn't just about the machine anymore. It was about something even more profound: the nature of time itself, a convergence of human potential, a shift in the very fabric of reality. This was no longer just a military project. It had become an awakening. Whistleblowers like Bill Wood, a former Navy SEAL with high-level clearance, revealed that the secrecy surrounding these experiments was not just to protect national security, but to prevent the world from discovering something far more dangerous: the illusion of free will. What they had seen suggested that humanity wasn't just operating within a linear timeline, but within a structure that could be manipulated, if only we understood the rules. The veil began to thin, and just like in the Matrix, they began to realize they were no longer dealing with just machines or technology. They were dealing with consciousness itself. The mind could transcend time, pierce through the veil of linear existence, and perhaps even alter it. As they delved deeper, another program, Stargate, emerged. It wasn't about machines or complex algorithms. It was about the human mind's ability to see without eyes, to perceive events far beyond the confines of this world, across oceans, continents, and even through time. Over 2 decades, the US government poured resources into this program, training individuals to see beyond the physical world. They weren't just making educated guesses. They were seeing real-time events, including Soviet submarines and classified facilities that no satellite could detect. One of the most astonishing aspects of Stargate came when remote viewers began to see the same thing: a shift, a break in reality centered around 2012. They saw timelines collapsing, reality behaving in ways that didn't fit conventional understanding. It wasn't an apocalypse. It was something else, a crossing over into a state of experience beyond logic, beyond bodies, beyond control. They weren't just predicting the future, they were seeing a rupture in time itself. An event horizon. It wasn't the end of the world. It was the beginning of a new kind of reality. And now, as we stand on the precipice of this event horizon, the question isn't whether these projects existed. The question is what they saw, and more importantly, what it means for us. Because the implications of these programs, the strange convergence of timelines, the bending of time and consciousness, point to a terrifying truth. Time is not linear. Reality is not fixed. And we are far more powerful than we've been told. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something else. Time, memory, and the slippage of reality. Time isn't flying. We're just forgetting to notice. It begins subtly. A day disappears. A week blurs. A month goes by and you're not sure where it went. There's something we all feel but few can explain. Time doesn't behave like it used to. It slips through our fingers like mist. It collapses behind us like a dream. And the strangest part? Everyone feels it, but no one talks about it. Why? Because the answer is terrifying. Your brain is no longer anchored in the now. Remember when you were young? Every day was a first. New faces, new fears, new feelings. You were there, in it, every moment seared into memory like fire. A single summer felt like an entire lifetime. But then came repetition. Routine, autopilot, wake, scroll, work, repeat. No edges to the day. No moments worth remembering. Just one smooth, silent blur. This is called temporal compression, and it's why time now feels like it's racing. Not because it is, but because we stopped living long enough to feel it. Your brain isn't broken. It's bored neuroscientists say it clearly. Memory equals time. And when we stop creating memories, time stops existing as an experience. Now add the trap of technology. Every swipe, every scroll, every tap, it doesn't build memory. It steals attention. You're not living life. You're just observing it disappear. I'll just check this one thing. And 20 minutes vanish. You don't forget life. You just never lived it long enough to remember. We don't store moments anymore. We outsource them. Thousands of photos, none we truly remember. Our lives documented, but unfelt. And without feeling, there is no memory. And without memory, there is no time. So maybe it's not a glitch in the matrix. Maybe we didn't shift. Timelines. Maybe the simulation didn't break. Maybe we just stopped paying attention. Now here's the question that should haunt you. What happens when an entire species forgets how to be present? What happens when memory fades not from age, but from distraction? And if time is speeding up, what are we missing while we're not watching? You're not crazy. You're just awake. If this spoke to you, if you felt time slip or reality shift, you're not alone. You were meant to hear this. And this journey, it's just beginning. Because what comes next isn't just about memory or time. It's about the signs the universe sends when we're ready to see. Synchronicity. When the universe starts to speak, you look at the clock. It's 11:11. You're thinking of someone, and they call. You ask a silent question, and the answer arrives from the mouth of a stranger or a lyric in a forgotten song. Coincidence? Or something more? Carl Jung called it synchronicity. Meaningful coincidences with no logical cause. Moments that pierce the illusion of randomness and whisper, you're on the path. In a world that feels fractured, these are cracks in the code. The bleeding edge of reality where truth breaks through. Synchronicity isn't luck. It's alignment. It's the moment your inner vibration matches a higher timeline. A version of you that already chose freedom, truth, healing. And when you match that signal, reality responds, repeating numbers, instant manifestations, the right people, the right words, at the right moment. It's not magic, it's resonance. You are not a victim of time. You are a frequency within it. Picture timelines as strings on a harp. Each vibrates at its own note. Your choices, emotions, beliefs, they tune you into the reality you experience. Synchronicities are how you know you're playing the right chord. Messages from the multiverse, confirmation that your frequency shifted and the world is responding, so pay attention, not to the noise, but to the patterns. If the same number keeps showing up, don't dismiss it. If a symbol recurs in dreams, ask what it means. If strangers keep saying the exact words you need, it's not chance. It's guidance. Your higher self is leaving breadcrumbs through the physical world back to your awakening. We're entering a new era, one where the veil is thinner. More are waking up, more are remembering. Time is no longer linear, it's liquid, malleable, And the choices you make today, the emotions you feel, the beliefs you hold, ripple across every version of you. So ask yourself, what vibration are you sending? Because the universe is listening, and it's answering, louder than ever. Timeline hopping isn't a metaphor, it's not imagination. It's a function of consciousness engaging with a probabilistic reality model. Most people assume they live on a fixed timeline, a straight arrow of cause and effect. But what they're actually navigating is a multi-branched structure of possibility. Every moment, every micro-choice, splitting off into variations of reality so granular that most of them seem indistinguishable, until they're not. You don't jump timelines the way you step through a door. It doesn't announce itself. There's no sound, no shift in the sky, no trembling underfoot. What you notice, if you're aware, is that something no longer aligns. Someone recalls an event that you remember differently. A detail so small, it almost escapes notice, has been rewritten. A brand name, a song lyric, a historical event, and you find yourself hesitating, doing the mental math. Trying to reconcile the impossibility. What you're experiencing is drift, bleed through, the residue of parallel pathways that once seemed out of reach but are now brushing up against the version you're standing in. There's a reason this is accelerating. We're approaching vibrational convergence where the veil between probable outcomes grows thin, and consciousness, especially collective consciousness, starts to become the driving force in selecting dominant timelines. In simple terms, the more aware you are, the more unstable your reality becomes, not because it's broken, but because awareness makes the illusion transparent, and when you start to see through it, you begin to influence it, not with effort, with resonance. Your beliefs, thoughts, and emotions are not passive. They are inputs, live code, constantly interfacing with the system we call time. When you shift internally, the field recalibrates, sometimes subtly, sometimes violently. And that recalibration, in many cases, is what we've mistaken for coincidence, glitch, or memory error. It's none of those things. You're not imagining the shifts. You're witnessing a fluid reality architecture in real time, shaped by you, whether you realize it or not. What we call the Mandela Effect is the collective version of this. It's when enough people stabilize a different memory of reality, and that frequency starts to pulse against the consensus timeline. It doesn't mean one version is false. It means both have existed, and enough awareness has been redirected to activate the interference pattern. This is what happens when individual timelines begin to intersect with others, when probability fields collapse into temporary convergence points. And in that convergence, memory becomes unstable, not because the brain is flawed, but because the data is being rewritten live, as your vibrational signature migrates into a new branch of the multiverse. Quantum mechanics hinted at this when it introduced superposition, the idea that a particle can exist in multiple states until observed. Consciousness, it turns out, is the observer. But it's not just collapsing particles. It's collapsing entire scenarios, timelines, realities. And now, with global awareness rising, more people are noticing the effects, the patterns, the shifts, the bleed, the sense that they're remembering, things that no longer exist or haven't yet. This is where it gets more complex. Timeline hopping isn't always intentional. In fact, most of it isn't. It happens in moments of deep emotional charge, grief, trauma, epiphany, surrender, any state that pushes consciousness into a heightened bandwidth of perception. That's the gateway. That's when the anchor loosens, and the field becomes reprogrammable. And here's the part most never consider. You don't hop into better timelines by fantasizing about them. You get there by becoming the version of you who already lives there. It's not magic, it's alignment. A reality exists right now where the world is peaceful, your body is healed, your purpose is clear. But access to that version isn't granted through hope. It's granted through energetic compatibility. If you're not vibrating at the frequency of that world's architecture, you won't even see the door. And this is what makes timeline work both simple and devastating, because it forces radical responsibility. If your world is distorted, disjointed, chaotic, there is no external enemy to fix it. That version of reality persists because you haven't yet disidentified with the frequency that sustains it. Change that, and the walls shift. People disappear. New opportunities arise. Old memories fade or reconfigure. You call it personal growth. But underneath it's structural migration. You are changing timelines. It's not fantasy, it's physics. And more importantly, it's happening constantly. The real question isn't whether you're jumping timelines, it's whether you're doing it consciously. If you're not, then you're at the mercy of inherited programming, emotional loops, collective fear signatures, all of which will anchor you to low-probability timelines where growth is slow, conflict is dominant, and the game feels rigged. But if you are aware, you can pivot, you can exit, you can realign to a world that reflects your most coherent frequency, not your surface thoughts, but your true resonance. What you actually believe when you're alone, what you expect when your guard is down, what you know deep in your nervous system. That's the tuning fork, that's the key. And right now, with all structures destabilizing, timeline fluidity is at an all-time high. You're not stuck here. You never were. Outro, before you go, take a breath. If this stirred something inside you, it's not by accident. You're part of a wave waking up to something ancient and infinite. If you felt that shift, like the past just whispered a secret, then don't let it fade. Like the video, share it with the ones who are ready to remember, and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. The timeline isn't fixed, but together we can choose a higher one.